What if that gallant knight, so skilled with a sword, spent his nights weaving words more intricate than any tapestry? What if your dashing suitor from the year 1350 hid a secret passion for verses, a love for language as profound as his love for you? Number 9. He's always carrying around a small, leather-bound book or scroll. You might first notice it tucked away, perhaps peeking from beneath a heavy cloak or a folded tunic. It is not a weapon, nor a coin purse, nor a set of dice for games. Instead, it is a small, compact object, perhaps no larger than your hand, or a bit longer if it is a rolled scroll. Cover, if it is a book, would likely be of well-worn leather, possibly darkened by years of handling, with subtle indentations where a thumb might have rested countless times. Sometimes it has a simple clasp, perhaps made of brass or bone, keeping its secrets safely within. Other times it is merely tied with a thin cord. This is not the kind of grand illuminated manuscript one might find chained in a cathedral library, heavy with gold leaf and elaborate artwork. This is a personal item, something for private contemplation. You might catch a glimpse of it during a quiet moment in the castle hall, when the evening light begins to fade and the sounds of the day grow softer. He might sit apart from the boisterous laughter of the other squires or knights, perhaps near a tall, narrow window, allowing the last sliver of twilight to illuminate the page. His fingers, perhaps strong and calloused from sword practice, might trace the delicate lines of script within. Pages themselves would be parchment, smooth and pale, made from carefully prepared animal skin, a precious material in itself. Ink, made from soot and gallnuts, would cover the surface in neat small script, perhaps adorned with modest flourishes but nothing overly elaborate. It is a work of humble beauty meant for quiet enjoyment. Consider the rarity of such an object in the medieval period. Books were not casually bought in a market stall. They were painstakingly copied by scribes, often in monasteries, or by specialized clerks in urban centers. Each page was a labor of love and immense skill. A single book could represent weeks or months of work, making it an incredibly valuable possession, often passed down through generations or carefully guarded by institutions. For an individual to possess such an item and to carry it with such frequency was truly an uncommon sight outside of a cleric or a very wealthy scholar. Yet he seems to view this small tome as an extension of himself, always within reach, never far from his person. One afternoon, you might observe him in the castle gardens, seated beneath the shade of an old oak tree. The sun dapples through the leaves, creating shifting patterns on the ground. He holds the small book open, but his gaze is not always fixed on the page. Sometimes his eyes drift, looking at the distant hills or up at the sky, a slight, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. He might hum a low tune so soft that it is barely audible, a melody that seems to rise from the words before him, or perhaps from the thoughts that the words inspire. The act is one of deep absorption, a quiet communion with the contents of the pages. He might occasionally pull a small quill from a hidden pocket, dip it in a small vial of ink, and make a few quick, almost secret notes in the margins, or perhaps add a new passage to an empty space at the end of a section. The ink stains on his fingers, if you were to notice them, are telltale signs of a man who spends time with pen and parchment, a stark contrast to the usual grime of the stables or the dust of the training yard. The way he protects this item is also noteworthy. If someone approaches him unexpectedly, he might quickly close the book, almost instinctively, or tuck it away beneath his cloak. It is not an act of rudeness, but rather one of privacy, as if the contents are too personal, too precious, to be shared without careful consideration. He treats it with a reverence usually reserved for religious texts or cherished heirlooms. He might even clean the cover meticulously with a soft cloth, brushing away any dust or stray hairs as if the book itself were a living thing deserving of the utmost care. This constant companionship with a written work This quiet dedication to its preservation and its contents suggests a bond far deeper than mere casual interest. He does not just own a book, he lives with it. Consider the travel and movements within medieval life. Journeys were often arduous, and possessions were kept to a minimum. A knight or a squire would prioritize practical items, weapons, riding gear, perhaps a small pouch of coins. Carry a book, especially one that is clearly for personal use rather than for official duties or religious observance, speaks volumes about its importance to him. It is a burden he chooses to bear, a comfort he cannot do without. It is not merely a sign of literacy, which, while not universal, was certainly present among the nobility and gentry. It is a sign of an engagement with the written word that transcends simple reading. It hints at a deeper, more intimate relationship with the thoughts and feelings captured on those delicate pages, perhaps even his own. The content of such a book might remain a mystery, its pages only glimpsed. Perhaps it contains stories of valiant knights and fair maidens, or perhaps it holds verses about the beauty of the natural world, the changing seasons, or the intricate dance of human emotions. Troubadours and quatrains. The famed lyric poets of the High Middle Ages often collected their own compositions or those of others in small personal manuscripts, often referred to as chansonniers, which allowed them to preserve and share their lyrical works. These were not always large public collections, but sometimes private compilations meant for performance or quiet reflection. A glimpse might reveal a line of verse that rings with the particular rhythm of a ballad, or a section dedicated to musings on love, loss, or chivalry. A particular style of script, perhaps neat and flowing, or perhaps rapid and almost messy in places, might suggest whether the writing is his own careful hand, or something he has copied from another source, or even a mix of both. The worn edges of the pages, the slight creases, or even faint smudges of ink speak to repeated handling, to a constant engagement with the written word, a private world he carries with him everywhere he goes. This constant presence of a personal written work, guarded and cherished, is a rare and telling detail in a world where words often vanished on the wind as soon as they were spoken. Number 8. His compliments are oddly specific and elaborate. When other suitors might offer a simple, "You are fair, my lady," or "Your smile is pleasing," your suitor's words unfold like a tapestry woven with threads of dawn and starlight. His compliments are not quick passing remarks, but carefully constructed declarations that linger in the air, rich with imagery and unexpected comparisons. It is as if he pauses, truly sees you, and then searches for the perfect phrase, one that might not even be common parlance in the castle halls. Imagine a scene at a feast. The hall is filled with the clamor of voices, the clatter of trenchers, and the joyful music of fiddles and pipes. Amidst this joyous cacophony, he approaches you, perhaps bringing a cup of wine or a choice morsel from the trencher. He might incline his head slightly, and his eyes, rather than just meeting yours, seem to take in the subtle hues of your gown, the way the torchlight catches in your hair, the exact curve of your brow. Then his voice, often quiet amidst the din, would offer something like, "Your laughter rings to this chamber with the clear, bright chime of a summer waterfall, and your eyes hold the profound blue of the distant sky on a cloudless morn." This is not the standard flattery. It is an observation infused with a delicate sense of natural beauty, a depth of feeling that transcends mere politeness. These elaborate descriptions are not limited to your physical appearance. He might compliment your wit by saying, "Your thoughts move like a swift river through a sunlit meadow, clear and ever-flowing, watering the very roots of wisdom." Or if you have shown kindness to a servant, he might remark, "The warmth of your heart is as boundless as the spring sun, nurturing every soul it touches, like gentle rain on parched earth." These are not phrases pulled from a common phrasebook. They are original, almost artistic in their construction, showing a mind that actively seeks out comparisons and metaphors to express sentiment. Such language stands out from the more direct, often practical speech of the medieval court, where words were primarily tools for conveying information or commands. Consider the renowned courtly love tradition that blossomed in the medieval period, particularly in the south of France with the troubadours, and later across Europe with the transcends in the north. Poets like Bernard de Ventadorn, a prolific troubadour of the 12th century, were masters of elaborate praise, often comparing their beloved ladies to celestial bodies, precious jewels, or idealized natural wonders. Their verses were rich with symbolism, using imagery of gardens, flowers, birds, and the dawn to evoke beauty and purity. They would speak of the light of her eyes, brighter than any star, or a voice sweeter than the nightingale's song. This highly refined and metaphorical language was a hallmark of their craft. Your suitor's compliments might sometimes be delivered with a touch of shyness, as if the words themselves are fragile and precious, meant only for your ears. He might glance away briefly after speaking, as if pondering the effect of his own chosen words, or perhaps already crafting the next beautiful phrase in his mind. This indicates that these are not spontaneous outbursts, but rather the result of careful consideration and a sensitivity to language itself. The words are not just spoken, they are crafted. He might even use personification, giving human qualities to abstract concepts, for example, remarking that generosity herself would blush to stand beside your open hand, or mercy finds her truest home within your gentle spirit. This rhetorical device, common in medieval poetry and allegory, lends a grandeur and depth to his expressions that sets them apart from the mundane. It suggests a mind that constantly plays with language, bending it to new and expressive forms. Other people in the court might even notice it. A lady-in-waiting might comment, "Sir, suitor's name, speaks with a silver tongue, does he not? So different from the plain talk of Sir Edwin, who only ever mentions how good the boar tastes." Such observations confirm that his manner of speaking is unusual, perhaps even exceptional. It is not merely eloquence, but a particular kind of verbal artistry. It is an indication that his mind is attuned to the nuances of expression, the precise weight of a word, and the emotional resonance of an image. This is a subtle yet profound difference from the everyday discourse of a medieval castle, where pragmatism often reigned supreme. His words carry an echo of the grand romances and lyrical ballads that captivated noble audiences, revealing a sensibility attuned to beauty and artistry beyond the ordinary. The very act of choosing such intricate words, when simpler ones would suffice, reveals a delight in language for its own sake, a deep appreciation for its potential to evoke emotion and paint vivid pictures in the mind. Number 7. He often disappears for long stretches, only to reappear looking inspired but tired. One moment he is there, part of the bustling court, perhaps engaged in conversation about hunting or the latest news from the marches. The next, he is gone. No grand departure, no announced intention. He simply fades away, leaving behind a subtle void in the lively scene. He might vanish during a busy afternoon or slip away from the evening meal, perhaps when the castle is at its most vibrant. These disappearances are not for hunting or for duty, which would be openly acknowledged. Instead, they are quiet, almost clandestine. When he returns, hours later, or perhaps even the next morning, there is a visible shift in his demeanor. His clothing might be slightly disheveled, a stray leaf clinging to his sleeve, or a smear of something dark on his finger that might be ink or charcoal. His hair might be tousled as if he has run his hands through it repeatedly in frustration or excitement, but it is his eyes that hold the most telling clues. They might be a little bloodshot from lack of sleep, or they might possess a faraway look, a dreamy quality, as if he has just returned from a distant shore, still seeing visions that others cannot. There is an almost palpable energy radiating from him, a sense of quiet triumph mixed with exhaustion. He moves with a certain lightness, a subtle hum, perhaps escaping his lips, or a contemplative, almost serene expression on his face. You might wonder where he goes. Perhaps to a secluded part of the castle gardens, where an ancient fountain trickles softly and the scent of roses fills the air, or to a hidden turret room, seldom used, with a dusty window overlooking the quiet moat. Perhaps even to a forgotten corner of the library, if the castle possesses one, where ancient manuscripts lie dormant in their chests. He seeks places of solitude, places where the clamor of courtly life cannot intrude, places where he can be alone with his thoughts. These solitary hours are spent not in leisure but in some kind of intense mental activity. He is not napping, nor is he simply idling. Tired set of his shoulders, the faint lines of concentration around his eyes, and the general air of a man who has wrestled with an unseen force, all suggest a demanding pursuit. Sometimes he might carry a small, wax-covered tablet and a stylus, or even a sheet of parchment and a quill, which would be carefully tucked away again upon his return. These tools, rarely seen in the hands of a typical knight or noble, would be the silent companions of his secret sojourns. Medieval philosophy and theology often spoke of divine inspiration, or muses descending upon individuals, especially those engaged in creative or scholarly pursuits. The idea that profound insights or beautiful creations required a period of intense, solitary reflection was widely accepted. Monks in their scriptoria, scholars in their studies, and even some mystics were known to spend long hours in quiet contemplation, emerging with new texts or revelations. For a troubadour or a courtly poet, this solitude was often crucial for the process of composition. They would often withdraw from the distractions of the court to refine their verses, to find the right word, the perfect rhyme, the most evocative metaphor. The Laias and romances of Marie de France, for example, suggest a deep and personal engagement with her own creative process, requiring time and space for introspection. Upon his return, he might be quieter than usual, more reflective, or even a little distant. He might seem to be replaying something in his mind, a sequence of words or images. He might even seem somewhat detached from the immediate concerns of the day, his thoughts still caught in the private world he just inhabited. Yet, there is often a subtle light in his eyes, a spark of satisfaction, a feeling of having achieved something significant. It is a quiet triumph, a victory won not on the battlefield, but within the confines of his own mind. His friends might joke about his disappearing acts, calling him a dreamer or a phantom, but they never truly understand the nature of his wanderings. They might assume he is hunting a rare beast, or perhaps has found a secret sweetheart outside the castle walls. They never suspect the true nature of his solitary pursuits. His weariness is not the result of physical exertion, but of intense mental effort, the kind that only comes from deep concentration and the arduous task of bringing something new into being, something that exists first only in the mind and then, slowly, painstakingly, takes shape on parchment. This pattern of prolonged, solitary absence, followed by a return with an air of creative exhaustion, marks him as someone who dedicates himself to a demanding, unseen craft, a craft that requires not just skill, but also profound inspiration and a deep connection to the inner landscape of thought and emotion. Number 6. He has an unusual interest in metaphors and allegories in everyday conversation. Unlike others who speak plainly and directly, your suitor's words often shimmer with layers of meaning, like sunlight through colored glass. He does not simply state a fact. He paints a picture, often using comparisons that are not immediately obvious, or weaving short illustrative stories that have a deeper message. He sees the world not just for what it is, but for what it represents, finding hidden connections between disparate things. For instance, if discussing the state of the castle's defenses, a typical knight might say, The north wall needs repair. Your suitor, however, might remark, "Our castle's shield, though strong, shows cracks where the winter winds have gnawed like a faithful knight." It cries out for healing hands to mend its weary spirit before the storm breaks. He transforms a practical observation into a vivid, personified image, lending it a dramatic, almost heroic quality. This is not how most people in a medieval court would speak. Their language was generally more pragmatic, focused on immediate needs and concrete realities. He might describe a particularly harsh winter not just as cold and difficult, but as the pale hand of Boreas, clutching the land in his icy grip, silencing the birds and frosting the very breath of man, promising a renewal when the sun, like a golden monarch, reclaims his rightful throne. This reveals a mind that constantly seeks out symbolic representations, drawing parallels between the immediate experience and grander, more mythical or elemental forces. This type of elevated language, rich in classical or folkloric allusions, was a hallmark of medieval poetry and rhetorical tradition. Allegory, a narrative that carries a symbolic meaning beyond its literal one, was a pervasive literary form in the Middle Ages. Works like the Roman de la Rose, a hugely influential French poem, or morality plays, such as Every Man used allegorical figures like Lady Reason, Sir Courtesy, or good deeds, to explore complex ideas about love, virtue, and morality. Poets and writers of the era often use allegory to convey social commentary, theological lessons, or philosophical insights in a way that was both engaging and thought-provoking. For someone to use this intricate mode of expression in casual conversation suggests a deep familiarity and comfort with such literary devices. You might notice him observing a group of ants diligently carrying crumbs, and he might comment, "See how the smallest creature, when united in purpose, can build a mountain from a speck of dust, a lesson for kingdoms divided, are they not?" He takes a simple everyday observation and immediately extracts a profound metaphorical lesson from it, often with an underlying moral or philosophical tone. He seems to be constantly searching for the deeper significance in everything around him, treating the world as a vast book of symbols, waiting to be read. His tales, even short anecdotes, might often conclude with a subtle moral not explicitly stated but woven into the fabric of the story itself. He might tell a seemingly simple story about a shepherd and a lost lamb, but the way he tells it, the emphasis he places on certain words or actions, leaves you with a feeling that the tale is really about faith or perseverance or the responsibility of leadership. He uses narratives as vessels for abstract ideas, a technique that was central to medieval storytelling, which often served to instruct as well as entertain. When discussing human character, he might describe someone not as greedy, but as a ravenous wolf, whose hunger knows no bounds, preying upon the flock for his own belly's content, or someone humble as a modest violet, bending gently to the breeze, yet holding a fragrance more sweet than any proud rose. These descriptions are not just vivid, they are imbued with judgment and insight, reflecting a mind that dissects and categorizes human nature through a symbolic lens. This tendency to classify individuals and their actions using animal or plant archetypes was common in bestiaries and moralistic fables popular during the period. Sometimes his metaphors might be so subtle that they almost pass unnoticed, blending pain into the flow of conversation, only to strike you later as remarkably insightful. It is a sign of a mind constantly working, constantly making connections, constantly interpreting the world through a symbolic framework. This is not simply a quirk of speech. It is a fundamental way of perceiving reality, a lens through which he processes information and expresses understanding. In an age where literal interpretation often dominated, such a consistent and natural inclination towards the metaphorical and the allegorical sets him apart, revealing a deeply poetic sensibility that finds meaning not just in the tangible, but in the echoes and reflections that lie beneath the surface of everyday life. Number 5. His gifts are never practical, but always symbolic or handcrafted. While other suitors might present you with a fine bolt of silk, a sturdy riding horse, or a jeweled brooch, your suitor's gifts are of a different nature entirely. They are never items of overt wealth or utility, but rather small, often unassuming objects, imbued with a quiet significance. Each gift seems to whisper a secret message, chosen not for its material value, but for the depth of thought and feeling it represents. Imagine receiving a small, intricately carved wooden bird, perhaps a nightingale or a lark. It is carved with such delicate precision that each feather seems distinct, and its eyes hold a surprising liveliness. The wood might be polished smooth, feeling warm and comforting in your palm. This is not a toy, nor a functional item for your chamber. It is an object of beauty for its own sake, a testament to hours of careful work. Such a bird might symbolize the beauty of song, the freedom of flight, or even a heartfelt wish for joy. The fact that he created it himself, rather than purchasing it, speaks volumes about the personal investment he makes in his offerings. Handcrafted items were valued for their skill and the labor involved. But in a society where status was often displayed through overt wealth, a gift of pure artistry was unusual. Another time he might present you with a single, carefully pressed wildflower, perhaps a forget-me-not, or a daisy tucked between two pieces of parchment and bound with a thin silken thread. It is a humble gift, yet the care with which it has been preserved and the choice of flower speaks volumes. In the medieval language of flowers, each bloom held a specific meaning. The forget-me-not for enduring remembrance, the daisy for innocence or new beginnings. This is not a bouquet which would wither swiftly. It is a permanent symbol, chosen for its intrinsic message rather than its fleeting beauty. This act demonstrates a keen awareness of symbolism, a desire to convey sentiment through subtle, meaningful gestures rather than grand displays. You might also receive a ribbon, perhaps embroidered with a delicate, almost hidden pattern. It could be a small knot of intertwining vines, symbolizing growth and connection, or a tiny stylized heart discreetly placed amidst other stitches. The stitching would be neat and precise, suggesting patience and attention to detail. This is not a fashionable accessory, but a small token designed to convey a message unique to him, a message only you might be meant to understand. Such personal touches were rare. Gifts were often about demonstrating status or cementing alliances. His gifts, by contrast, seem to be about expressing a private internal world. Consider the context of gift-giving in the medieval period. Noble marriages often involved substantial dowries and elaborate exchanges of jewels, land, and valuable goods, all to solidify alliances and display wealth. Even in courtship, a suitor might present a lady with furs, fine fabrics, or perhaps a piece of silver tableware, all of which served a practical purpose or displayed financial standing. Your suitor's choices deviate from this norm. His gifts do not advertise his wealth or power. They express his inner thoughts, his sensitivity, and his unique way of seeing the world. They are gifts of the heart and the mind, rather than the purse. He might even present you with a small hand-drawn sketch on a piece of parchment, depicting a scene from nature, or perhaps a fantastical creature from a legend. The lines might be simple, but the image itself would be evocative, designed to spark imagination or quiet contemplation. The colors, if any, would be subtle, perhaps made from crushed berries or minerals, applied with a delicate touch. This again points to a personal investment of time and artistic skill, rather than a reliance on bought goods. These symbolic gifts are reflective of a mind that finds beauty and meaning in the seemingly ordinary, and that seeks to communicate through metaphor and allegory. Troubadours and courtly poets often wove symbolic meanings into their works, using imagery of gardens, birds, and precious objects to represent abstract concepts like love, loyalty, or despair. Their works were filled with layers of meaning, inviting the listener or reader to delve deeper than the surface. For someone to consistently choose such gifts implies a similar way of thinking, a preference for communication that transcends the obvious and speaks to the spirit. His generosity is expressed, not through monetary value, but through the richness of his imagination and the sincerity of his craft, making each small offering a unique and cherished piece of his secret world. The smallness and privacy of the gifts, coupled with the personal effort behind them, make them more intimate than any grand display, signifying a true connection to the art of subtle expression. Number 4. He has an uncanny way of remembering exact phrases you've said, even weeks later. Most people in a medieval court, immersed in the daily grind of duties, conversations about harvests, or the latest gossip, might recall the gist of a past conversation. They remember facts, agreements, or important pronouncements. But your suitor possesses a different kind of memory, one that seems to capture the precise cadence of your words, the exact phrasing of a casual remark, even a fleeting observation you made in passing. And he recalls these phrases not just to repeat them, but to weave them into new contexts, sometimes subtly, sometimes strikingly. One afternoon, you might be discussing the merits of a particular type of embroidery thread, and you comment idly, "The moon's silver sheen of this silk reminds me of the light on the river at midnight, so cool and distant." Weeks later, during a conversation about something entirely different, perhaps a story of a journey or a description of a knight's shield, he might unexpectedly interject a line. "His armor gleamed with a moon's silver sheen, like the light on the river at midnight, so cool and distant." The words would be exactly yours, repurposed, transformed, and given a new resonance. He does not claim them as his own, he simply uses them, perhaps with a subtle glance in your direction, a hint of a private acknowledgement. This is not a demonstration of a good memory for facts, but for language itself. He seems to collect words and phrases, savoring their sound and their evocative power, and then stores them away for later use, like a meticulous scribe arranging precious pigments. It is as if he sees the raw material of everyday speech as something malleable, something that can be shaped and refined. The oral tradition was extremely strong in the medieval period, where stories, histories, and poems were often transmitted by word of mouth. Bards, minstrels, and wandering scholars cultivated prodigious memories to recall long narratives, epic poems, and complex genealogies. They were masters of repetition, variation, and the art of recitation. He might remember a witty observation you made about a clumsy servant, and later, when discussing the challenges of a new siege engine, he might say, "Ah, that contraption moves with the same hesitant grace as a three-legged dog trying to cross a frozen pond," a direct echo of your earlier quip. The effect is often surprising, sometimes amusing, and always a little unsettling in its precision. It suggests an active, attentive listener, one who hears not just the meaning of your words, but the way they are formed, their innate music. This phenomenon extends beyond direct repetition. He might incorporate a distinct turn of phrase you often use into his own speech, or respond to a question using your own particular idiom, as if he has absorbed your verbal patterns. It is an act of deep linguistic immersion, where he is not just hearing your words, but internalizing them, making them part of his own mental lexicon. This shows a profound engagement with language, a fascination with its nuances and its power. For a poet, the observation and absorption of spoken language is crucial. The rhythms of natural speech, the common turns of phrase, the expressions unique to a particular person or region, all form the raw material for compelling verse and narrative. Poet listens with a different ear, seeking inspiration and authenticity in the everyday. He might even paraphrase something you said, but in a way that captures the essence of your meaning with startling accuracy, as if he has distilled your thoughts to their purest form. For example, if you expressed a feeling of loneliness about a particular situation, he might later describe a character in a story as a soul adrift upon a vast empty sea, with no star to guide it home, echoing your sentiment with a vivid poetic image. This ability to capture and re-express the emotional core of your words demonstrates not just memory, but a capacity for empathy and interpretation, a core skill for any creative mind. This uncanny recall is not a boast or a trick. It seems to be an inherent aspect of his cognitive process. It is a sign of a mind that values language above all else, that sees it as a precious commodity, a source of endless fascination and inspiration. In a world where fleeting sounds often left no trace, his ability to preserve and represent your words is a testament to a deep abiding connection with the spoken word, a sensitivity that transcends mere communication and enters the realm of verbal artistry. It is a silent homage to the power of language, and a subtle indication of a mind constantly working with the very fabric of speech, crafting, refining, and remembering. Number 3. He carries a small, well-worn musical instrument, even if he claims not to be a musician. Amidst the usual accoutrements of a knight or noble, a sword, a dagger, perhaps a falconer's glove, your suitor often has a small musical instrument tucked away. It might be a rebec, with its delicate, pear-shaped body and 3 strings often carried in a soft leather case. Or perhaps a small, light lute, its curved back fitting snugly against his side. It could even be a simple pipe, made of wood or bone, light enough to fit in a pocket. The key characteristic is its wear. It is not new, nor is it merely decorative. Its surface is smoothed by countless hours of handling, its edges softened, and perhaps a faint scratch or two tells a story of travel and constant use. He might not play it openly, or often, but you catch glimpses. During a quiet moment in the stable, waiting for his horse, he might absently pick up the rebec, resting it against his shoulder. His fingers, strong from gripping a sword hilt, might pluck a few tentative notes, a short, melancholy melody that seems to drift and fade into the background noise. He might hum softly along, a tune that is too short to be a recognizable song, but which possesses a certain lyrical quality, as if it is a nascent thought taking musical form. If someone enters, he might quickly put it down, almost sheepishly, as if caught doing something he considers trivial or private. He might tell you, if directly asked, that he is no musician, merely a dabbler, or that it is an old family heirloom he sometimes practices with for amusement. The way he handles it, the almost reverent touch, and the moments of profound absorption when he is with it, suggest something more. He might sit by a window at dusk, the instrument cradled in his lap, not playing but simply running his fingers over the strings or tracing the curve of its neck. It is a contemplative act, almost meditative. In the medieval period, music and poetry were intimately intertwined. Most poetry was not simply read silently from a book. It was performed, sung, or chanted. Troubadours and quatrains were not just poets. They were also composers and performers, skilled in playing instruments like the lute, harp, or rebec, which provided the melodic framework for their lyrical verses. Their works were often called transcends, or songs, for a reason. The music was an integral part of the poetic experience, conveying emotion and adding layers of meaning to the words. Even epic poems and ballads were often recited with a rhythmic chant or accompanied by a simple instrument. The great courts would have minstrels who performed these works, often accompanying themselves. His instrument might have a single, often unseen detail, a faint, almost invisible mark on the fretboard where a particular chord is often played, or a slight discoloration on the body where his hand rests most often. These are the marks of consistent practice, of a deep engagement with the instrument beyond mere casual tinkering. He might be found tuning it meticulously, a task that requires a keen ear and a subtle touch, suggesting a sensitivity to pitch and harmony. Occasionally, you might hear him humming a tune you have never heard before, a melody that feels fresh and original, almost as if it has sprung directly from his own mind. He might then subtly shift the instrument, experimenting with a chord or a run of notes as if trying to capture the elusive melody in a tangible form. This process of musical experimentation, of trying to translate inner soundscapes into physical notes, is a powerful indication of a creative mind at work. The instrument is not just an object. It is a tool for expression, a conduit for ideas that perhaps cannot be fully articulated in words alone. His musical instrument, therefore, is not just a leisure item. It is a companion to his creative spirit, a silent witness to his inner world. It is a way for him to explore rhythms, harmonies, and melodies that might ultimately find their way into the very structure and feeling of his words. The gentle presence of this well-worn instrument, carefully tended and quietly cherished, is a profound indicator that his sensibilities extend beyond the practical, beyond the material, into a realm where words and music dance together, where sounds become thoughts and thoughts become songs, a place where the secret poetry of his soul finds its voice. Number 2. He shows an unexpected emotional depth or melancholy even when things are going well. In a society where outward displays of emotion, particularly vulnerability, were often reserved for private moments or extreme circumstances, your suitor stands out. While other knights might exhibit a stoic demeanor, a gruff practicality, or boisterous joviality, he occasionally reveals a surprising stratum of deep feeling, an unbidden melancholy, even when life at court seems to be flowing smoothly. It is not a constant sadness, but rather a fleeting shadow, a moment of profound introspection that breaks through the surface of daily life. You might be at a celebratory banquet, the hall filled with laughter, the clinking of goblets, and the merry strains of music. Yet you catch him in a quiet moment, perhaps gazing into the flickering flames of the hearth, or out of a window into the moonlit night. His expression is not of joy or amusement, but a thoughtful solemnity, a trace of wistfulness in his eyes. He might let out a soft sigh, almost imperceptible, a breath that seems to carry the weight of unseen thoughts. When asked if something troubles him, he might simply offer a vague reply. The fleeting nature of beauty, perhaps, or the vastness of the world, and our small place within it. These are not the typical concerns of a young man focused on battles or land. This melancholy is not despair or ill humor. It is more of a contemplative sadness, a sensitivity to the ephemeral nature of existence, a profound awareness of the beauty and fragility of life. It is the kind of thoughtful sorrow that underpins much of medieval poetry. The ubi sunt motif, for instance, Latin for "where are they?", was a common theme in medieval verse, reflecting on the transient nature of earthly power, beauty, and life itself. Poets would lament the passing of great kings, beautiful ladies, and the very seasons, pondering where all this glory had gone. This profound sense of the fleetingness of time and joy is a hallmark of many poets. He might be unusually attuned to moments of transition, the dying light of a sunset, the last lingering notes of a song, the wilting of a beautiful flower. He might pause, observing these small acts of passing with a quiet intensity as if witnessing a deeper truth unfolding. He might then offer a comment, like, "Even the brightest rose must yield to the autumn's breath, yet its memory sweetens the air long after its petals fall." Such observations are not just poetic. They reveal a mind that feels deeply and reflects profoundly on life's inevitable cycles of growth and decay. Sometimes, this emotional depth manifests in an unexpected empathy. He might notice the quiet suffering of a servant, or the loneliness of an old retainer, when others are oblivious. He might express a subtle understanding of another person's hidden pain, not through pity, but through a genuine recognition of shared human experience. This capacity for deep emotional resonance with others, for seeing beyond the surface to the hidden feelings, is a characteristic often found in those who seek to articulate the human condition through art. His responses to tragedy or loss are never melodramatic, but are marked by a quiet, often profound sorrow, a sense of universal grief. He might speak of the shared burden of humanity, or the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity, in terms that are both moving and inchieful. This ability to articulate complex emotions and to connect personal feelings to universal themes points to a mind that is not only observant, but also capable of profound synthesis and expression. Consider the ballads and lyrical poems of the medieval era, which often explored themes of unrequited love, the pain of separation, the loss of youth, and the inevitability of death. These poems were not always cheerful. They often delved into the melancholic aspects of life, offering a mirror to the inner experiences of the audience. For someone to consistently show such emotional depth, particularly a contemplative melancholy even in times of prosperity, is a subtle yet significant indication of a mind that lives deeply within its own feelings and perhaps seeks to give them voice through unseen means. It is a clear sign that his world is not just one of action and duty, but also of rich internal feeling and thoughtful contemplation. Number 1. He has a strange connection with the natural world, often talking to animals or observing plants for long periods. While others of his station might see the natural world as a resource for hunting, a barrier to travel, or merely a backdrop to their lives, your suitor seems to possess a unique and almost mystical bond with it. He approaches flora and fauna with a gentle curiosity, a quiet respect, and an unusual attentiveness that sets him apart from the practical, often exploitative, relationship most medieval people had with their environment. You might first observe it in the castle stables. Instead of merely overseeing the grooms, he might pause beside a horse, stroking its mane and murmuring soft words, as if holding a private conversation. The horse, in turn, seems to respond to his presence with a calm demeanor, perhaps nuzzling his hand or resting its head near his shoulder. He does not treat the animals as mere beasts of burden, but as creatures with their own distinct spirits, deserving of gentle acknowledgement. He might comment on the subtle shift in a hound's expression, or the way a stable cat grooms itself, with an observation that suggests a deeper understanding of their inner lives. In the castle gardens or fields, he might spend an unusual amount of time simply observing. He might watch a bird building its nest, not with the intention of disturbing it, but with a focused, almost meditative gaze, following its movements as it meticulously gathers twigs and straw. He might trace the delicate veins on a leaf or run his fingers through the soft petals of a rose, contemplating its form and fragrance with a quiet intensity. He seems to find endless fascination in the intricate details of the natural world, details that most people overlook in their busy lives. You might remark on the particular hue of the sunset, or the way the morning dew glistens on a spider's web, noticing beauty in the fleeting and the small. This deep connection is often reflected in his descriptions. When others might speak of a forest as a place for timber, he might describe it as a green cathedral where ancient trees whisper secrets to the wind, and the light dances through their leafy spires like scattered coins. He uses the natural world as a wellspring of imagery, transforming ordinary observations into vivid, almost sacred landscapes. This is not simply an appreciation for beauty. It is a way of seeing the world through a lens of profound symbolism and interconnectedness. Consider the rich natural imagery that permeates medieval poetry, particularly in the courtly love tradition and the pastoral genre. Poets frequently drew upon detailed observations of flora and fauna to create metaphors for human emotions, the cycle of life, or the virtues of their beloved. The nightingale often symbolized the lover's song or the sorrow of separation. The rose represented beauty, purity, or the beloved lady herself. Coming of spring, with its blossoming flowers and singing birds, was a common opening trope, symbolizing renewal, love, and hope. This constant wellspring of natural imagery in verse suggests that poets cultivated a keen eye for the details of their environment, drawing inspiration from its every leaf and creature. He might even have a small, almost imperceptible habit of collecting natural objects. A particularly smooth stone, a fallen feather, or a dried seed pod, which he might keep tucked away in a small pouch, not for their material value, but for some unseen significance they hold for him. These are tokens of his quiet wanderings, small pieces of the wild world brought into the confines of the castle. He might absent-mindedly arrange them or simply hold them, as if drawing comfort or inspiration from their simple presence. His attentiveness to the cycles of the seasons, the changes in weather, or the behavior of animals is not born of a farmer's necessity or a hunter's instinct, but of a contemplative spirit. He might predict a coming rain simply by observing the way the birds fly, or comment on the subtle shift in the light as the days grow shorter, with a sense of quiet reverence. This deep immersion in the rhythms of the natural world, this profound respect for its living creatures and its intricate details, is a powerful indicator of a soul that finds its deepest resonance in the untamed beauty of the world around him. He sees the natural world not as something separate, but as a living, breathing entity that mirrors the very depths of human experience, a source of endless wonder and perhaps of endless verse.